There we go. Hey everybody, it's Kev Hempel with Freestone Reconstruction and B. Taylor Painting, and we're here for our third digital trade show of the year. I've got Laura Ravazza on and Eric Olson as well, and we're expecting one more. We discovered that 60 minutes or 45 minutes a little too long, so we're just going to go with 30 minutes or 20 minutes today and just kind of get an update. And everything is essentially changing day by day. It seems like every 12 to 24 hours we've got massive changes in our life professionally. So we're going to chat about that and see where we go with it. Janet, you're just joining, and just a heads up, if you can hear us, that we have pressed the record button, so we are on full cue. Laura, why don't you start?
Hi, how is everybody? I know that everything's changing so much right now, and we're all just trying to stay on top of everything and make sure we have the most up-to-date information. As most of you are aware, I'm sure you've got the updated mandates of what is defined as essential work and not essential work. It seems like that's been changing on a somewhat regular basis. What is regular right now, I think we're all kind of looking for that definition, but just trying to stay up to date on what information is coming out at us and who can do what work and what is going on in our communities and some challenges our communities are facing right now, as we're into week 3 already. Yeah, it's week 3. Oh my gosh. On my end, I actually feel like homeowners in our communities are calming down a little bit. It's interesting to see the emails that come in on Monday mornings with people who are not used to having so many neighbors at home, not used to all the stuff going on at home, and really trying to hone in on our customer service and our communication skills as a team and helping those owners navigate through getting used to some of these uncomfortable conversations and just situations, you know, that they're not used to facing. And we want to make sure that we're helping them with grace and not just attacking our neighbors. I think that's probably the most interesting thing that has come up this week for me is the intolerance of so many people in the communities.
Is that something that often would come up aside from this isolation and it's just now being highlighted, or is it something that kind of always happened in the background?
I mean, we always deal with neighbor to neighbor issues, right? Like there's always some neighbor to neighbor issues, but I think the things that are coming out right now, like so-and-so had loud music going on until 11 o'clock at night, and lo and behold, he had loud music going on because he had to replace his floors because he had a medical condition, needed to be able to use a wheelchair, had carpets. So there's all these other things going on, but all the homeowner heard was, he has loud music and we're not supposed to be having people over and all of these things, versus understanding the full context of the situation. So I think it's more like us trying to get a full understanding of what's going on, picking up the phone and having conversations with owners versus just sending emails and letters. I know us managers and admin team in my company are on the phone a lot more, just trying to talk through and resolve issues with them. So yes and no. I would say the answer is, I think people are a little bit more impatient right now. So maybe they're being a little bit more sensitive on what they would typically be.
Understood. Eric, how about you? What's going on? And we haven't really chatted too much. What's going on in your world there?
Yeah, it's I would just kind of say it's been a little bit weird. You know, the business is unusual. Is very apt. I mean, I've been in touch with a few more people. I've had kind of some random, you know, smaller odds and ends things come up. But I'm actually really curious to kind of hear Laura's take, just as she just gave, in terms of what's happening in the communities, because I would say that's one area where I just feel a big void that I just normally would feel like I have a better feel for, but because everybody's kind of locked down, other than the people I talk to, I just don't have a good sense for how, you know, how people are kind of taking us being on site, for example, you know, so I've been on a couple of different properties where, you know, I went to look at something and like immediately people are slamming doors and like dogs are barking, and it's a little chaotic actually, honestly, to go visit something where normally it's a lot quieter because people are at work or they're just not kind of paying attention. And now it's all of a sudden, who's this guy? Doesn't, you know, unless I'm wearing the PPE and all that stuff, they kind of, you know, I've gotten a few odd looks. So I'm very fascinated to kind of hear Laura's perspective of what she's hearing.
Awesome. Yeah, Laura, why don't you go further in that then?
Yeah, I actually just that you say that, I actually had a situation happen this week too with a janitorial company I work with was out there cleaning the gutters and cleaning off the roofs because of all the rain. This particular community has a lot of roof issues. So, we get them out there right away. And we actually had a homeowner come up to them and start screaming and yelling at them for being at the property doing work. I wasn't anticipating that at all because it's work that has to be done. Otherwise, we're going to have massive roof leaks. So I was surprised by that. And I wish that the homeowner would have contacted me and reached out to me and had the conversation with me versus approaching the homeowner or the business partner. I know we've put messages out to all of our communities saying, please don't approach anybody working in the community. If you have concerns or questions, please reach out to management directly, just so we can maintain that social distancing. But yeah, I guess it doesn't surprise me that you're saying that. I would make sure that I had my company uniform or, some kind of insignia on when I was at the communities, just because I think people are not just leery about the disease spreading itself, but also looters.
Yes.
And I think that that's why they're hyper vigilant, especially depending on what area you're going to and what kind of community. I think people are really looking out for their neighbors, looking out for their neighbors' cars. I know there's people that haven't been able to get home and they've got neighbors looking out on their patios and their balconies. I have been dealing with a lot more break-ins than what I typically deal with at communities. So I think they're coming from more of a safety sense to make sure you're not like scoping the community out to come back later than more of a disease perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like neighborhood watch on steroids. Because it's hyper vigilant right now, and there's a lot of suspicion, and rightly so, because we're being asked to shelter in place. So why are you at my place?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
That's crazy. Yeah, when we first got requested to isolate and kind of shelter in place, me and a friend went out and we were walking around the neighborhood, and that's something that I did point out was it's like a neighborhood watch. Like we have a neighborhood watch right now. But Eric, what I was thinking was, as Laura was talking, was she is really kind of right too, is that we're all a little more vigilant, but we also have this trauma that potentially could be going on in us as well. Like we're not used to walking around with masks. We don't know that under, how we're supposed to act in accordance with each other based on where we're at and what we're doing. And I really do think from a whole, we've got some fears that are starting to take place in some. So it's the perception. I keep going back to the perception of communicating, and because we're isolated physically, but we're not socially isolated really, because we're all being more social than where we were before. We're now just all in a different place mindset wise. And something about the perception as well is we just recently got new parameters of construction and different things that, we need to watch out for as far as like essentials, right? Like if you're an essential business and everything. Just this morning, I was on a phone call with a chief building official, and we were chatting about what is being considered essential or not. I was on the call with him for 45 minutes, and we were going back and forth on what the actual language is in the use of essential, and if we were going to be allowed to continue on the project or not. Now, this particular building official has the understanding at this point that we will not be able to continue on. But when you really read the language, it doesn't say that we can't, that we shouldn't, that we won't. It just says that there's one word that makes a difference, is and.
Yes.
In that it says and. But when you remove that and the sentence there, it allows you to continue to move on and you become essential. So now we've got this.
You have to remember that, Kevin, and, shall, may, those are all one words that all have legal ramification.
Right. And so what I'm getting at is that perception of like, we're coming at it from two different points of view, looking at it, and we've got no one to go, so does this particular project does this project actually exist with this one? Can we work there? There's nobody right now that anybody can call. And it's a communication disaster, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we depend on our experts in the business judgment role, what about the particular association contacting counsel and getting an opinion on that based on, because they interpret the ands and buts and shalls and mays. And to give you a some guidance and to give the association some guidance so that you're not taking the risk of bumping up against the, oh my God.
Perfect.
I 100% agree. Been getting legal opinions on lots of random things lately just because of the unprecedented waters we're in. I'm not an attorney and I'm not going to act like I am.
Right. 100%. So there's the challenge there. If you continue as an essential working along in this perception of the information being sent out, is it's coming out every 24 hours.
Yeah.
So now we're shifting every 20, like it's definitely a challenge with everything that's been changing. And the only thing that I can think of is every day is a new day. And we just need to take the information in and go, okay, here's the steps and here's what we need to do, you know, to make it all happen.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, I just wanted to point out, we actually have this, we do daily questions in our office of just like, you know, what's going on, you know, just a random question that we answer. If everybody see my wall, you know what I'm talking about. So we had our question yesterday, and Summer in my office actually made a really good point. She says, it's more physical distancing than social distancing because our social has gone through the roof and people are communicating a lot more. They're communicating via video, things that they didn't even think they were going to be able to do. They're doing. We just physically can't be around each other. I'd love to see them change that verbiage from physical distancing instead of social distancing, because I think social distancing has such a negative connotation with it, where we're actually way more socially involved than ever.
It's true. It's true. I don't know who coined it. Somebody coined it along the way, but yesterday I think was the first day that I had heard somebody pull it out and they said, it's actually not social distancing. We're actually more social than ever. It's more physical distance.
Yeah. I'm glad to start hearing the change in verbiage because that's exactly how I feel. My physical distancing has been true, self-imposed with, you know, the death of my husband and making changes in that respect. But once I was told that I must now physically distant, the amount of social interaction that I have, thank God for the internet, et cetera, has been unbelievable in my life. You know, when you were talking before, Kevin, I felt like the changes that come not only every day, but sometimes every hour, depending on what you're listening to, it just feels like a noose that's going on tighter and tighter and tighter. And those of us that, or those people that are having problems with the rules to begin with, and we know who they are because we live in communities, are starting to act out. And that's employers as well as employees and the workers. I just got off the telephone call before my Zoom CAI event where my sister in New Jersey, now it's a different state, she has worked for a pool company for years. Her employers I told her she needed to get a plan B when this is all over because they don't treat her very well. But in any event, she is now, he's going back and forth about who's an essential worker. And she's in the brick and mortar location and she's testing water and providing supplies for pools. And so there's a lot of interaction by the public. This isn't something that she can be physically distanced from, and she's got a compromised immune system. But because of what's going on in Jersey, and she has tried for 2 weeks in order to try to collect unemployment and has not been successful getting through, she's like stuck between a rock and a hard spot. And so I got off the phone and I was frustrated because there's no way that I can really be of a great assistance except suggestions about totally trying to protect yourself as best you can in your environment with cleaning, you know, multiple times and not letting, you know, people get into your space, et cetera, et cetera. So I shake my head and I know that we're all kind of dealing with this in one way or another. Yesterday I had an opportunity to talk to a friend that lives in Somerset, which is one of the seniors communities out in Brentwood. And I was really shocked because I know who the management company is that works with this particular Somerset. And I had him go on. First of all, he told me because the website that they use has been useless to him because they don't really update it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He hasn't been on it for a while, for about a year. So while I'm on the phone with him, he goes onto the website and there's no content, there's no communication about what's going on here. There's a, it's like totally a useless tool as far as he's concerned. Yes, I saw a copy of they only have like email and the website as far as the communication that these seniors have. Mm-hmm. And oh yeah, if you go down to the clubhouse, here's a bulletin that, paper. Well, the paper bulletins are no longer valid because the clubhouse is closed and nobody updates them. And the website is not addressing any of these issues at all. So, I'm grateful to be working with so many, I want to call them professional community managers, because they offer services. They're up to date. A lot of them, like my PIC here with Laura, involved in legislation, is involved in helping people be the change. And I get frustrated when I see this is, and I won't discuss who this management company is, but they're supposed to be a large influencer in our community, and they are not influencing, and that really frustrates me.
This situation really illuminates, and the internet as a whole has illuminated now who we are, right? And now that we're in physical isolation with each other, we now have to fall on the communication aspects. Right. And we now have to understand how to communicate what we're communicating. And that, in that situation, to me, sounds like there's a communication breakdown and almost they're not allowing in that particular situation. I mean, without them being here to protect themselves, they're not allowing in that particular situation the opportunity to really change into what they need and struggling. And that might even come down to the fact of that person that manages that property is just overwhelmed with whatever they've got going on. And it's just a ball that's being dropped, like, or not. Or maybe this particular person you were listening to and talking to felt that this was not adequate enough for them. And there may not be, I don't know.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Don't those communities have tennis courts and golf courses and pools and big giant clubhouses? Like, they have a lot of common area stuff, right?
Yeah. And they're all broken down to it's Somerset 1, 2, 3. And
right. Okay, that's what I thought. I would think in a situation like that with a senior community in all those facilities, and you have already, like, I could see there being a delay if you needed to create a website and all those things. I could understand a delay. But if you have that tool there, even if it's not fancy, I think this is probably like my third week saying this, it doesn't need to be a fancy, pretty graphic message. If you don't have the time or that's overwhelming to you, just get the information out. Okay. Especially if you have a website. I mean, that's the greatest tool that you can use at this point in time. We're all over our websites. It's the fastest way to get information out and share with their tenants, so that we're not waiting on mail, plus mail delivery is delayed and everything else. I mean, that would be your go-to spot. If I were a resident in the community in a situation like that, I would probably reach out to the management company and say, I understand we have a website. I understand you're probably very overwhelmed. What can I do to help you? Can I help? I will draft some posts and email them to you if you could put them up. Like, what do you need from me as a homeowner in this community to help get some messaging out? It's kind of unorthodox for a homeowner to do that, but given the situation and what's going on, if they have the time and the capability on their hands to do that, I mean, we may as well volunteer and ask.
That was my suggestion. Not only that, but to make connection with the current board members. And kind of highlight that. And the seniors, we have more available time. I just said we. More available time.
Awareness. Congrats. That's
well, maybe they start an emergency preparedness committee or a corona committee where the board members and homeowners can get together, maybe make a list of people who can help, people who need help. What kind of messaging do you want to get out? Do Zoom coffee meetings with the seniors. Like, I would probably start with a committee. I would talk to a board. I would talk to the manager. What do you need? Would this be overwhelming to you? Because you don't want to come in guns blazing and be like, you're not doing your job and this is how I'm going to help you do your job.
Right.
That's not going to get you anywhere.
Wow, yeah,
Like,
it gets you no communication.
right. So like, I always find like, this is the problem. This is what I see as a solution. What do you see as a solution? How can I help you? And I think you get a lot farther with the board and the homeowners. And who knows, there might be people facing certain conditions in the community too, and that could be why the messaging isn't getting out.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons. I was just surprised, and so I'm going to continue to follow up with him to see if I can help at all.
And you can talk to me offline if you need assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add 2 cents to that. People have different takes on committees. Some can be very helpful, some cannot be. But if you do, I was just thinking, given the time that we're in, now would actually be a really good time to form committees to do things, especially for overwhelmed managers. That's probably their number one productive function, at least when I was a manager, to the degree that they can help the manager do what they need to do. That's where you're most valuable. So I would definitely encourage that.
Yeah, I had a pretty aggressive conversation last week. I was really frustrated on myself and not just the industry as a whole that we didn't learn from the fires and what those communities went through with the fires, and why we haven't reached out to CERT as an organization that'll help the community make sure that they have all the preparations and everything in place in case there is a natural disaster. Like, we as an industry should have been a little bit more proactive when it came to this and really listen to those stories and what those people went through, because an emergency preparedness committee could help with stuff like that, making sure there's extra water and batteries and flashlights and stuff like that.
Right. Well, plus what we learned today at the Zoom for CAI Northern California, I have been seeing it, but I didn't realize the extent of it, that National put out a HOA business resources.com that's open to the general public as well. You don't have to be a CAI member. That is a great resource for our individual members. And I think the more we kind of talk about that and what's available for resources, the more we're going to educate our constituency to know what CAI does for them. And it could make some really strong CAI members after all this is over, and continue to keep those lines of communication open. I like that.
Janet, can you send, I agree with that too. Can you send that link over to me on the email so we can, when we post this on social and stuff and everywhere, we can post that and kind of.
Let me write that down so I don't forget.
That's awesome. Well, we're coming up to, let me see, we're at 127, so let's square this thing away. Last week I asked about one thing we were grateful for. I think that, it's an awesome thing. I think that everybody on the call right now definitely is grateful for stuff. But today I think I want to ask, what's one thing that you learned while on this video chat today? If anything at all.
I'll start. I did not have the perspective that people would be looking for looters until we started talking about it. I was more thinking like, are they out on the community, disease and everything else? And as we started talking, it kind of just made everything come together because of all the break-ins and stuff that I've been dealing with lately, that probably is actually the much larger reason than the disease itself.
I was just going to say, I think for me, and this is such a small thing, but I guess it just does help you to try to kind of think about things in general. I mean, just the physical distancing versus the social distancing. I wasn't really even paying attention, honestly, to that language, because to me they were kind of the same thing. But I can see when you really kind of think about it, there is a little bit of a difference there. Because it does sound a little bit more depressing to say social distancing, because we are interacting with one another. It's not like we're just completely isolated. So just a little thing.
Thank you.
Janet?
For me today, the conversation about, you mentioned fear. I realized that I'm grateful to be able to have places to talk about this. And even though this is on a big digital platform, as opposed to, you and I sitting together, any one of you, and talking about it. I mentioned it to Laura earlier on the telephone call. I have realized that I have taken literally the quarantine issue so literal that I haven't even gone out to my backyard to be able to sit out there. Because I had listened to like one report about the airborne disease. And so I've been in the house for 24 days now. And this is the contact that I've been able to have, is what I see on my screens. And so I appreciate this, to be able to say I'm grateful that I can, FEAR is an acronym in the programs that I'm in, and it either means false emotions appearing real or F everything and run. And I realized that, yeah, that's been going around in the bad neighborhood of my head. So to be able to let that go and say, okay, after this call, I'm going to finish my lunch outside and be able to get some fresh air and not let that fear kind of paralyze me. So thank you.
You know what Todd says? You can go in fear or you can go in faith. You can't do both. Pick one.
Yeah. Yes. Amen to that, sister.
That's beautiful. And I feel like my discovery through this was that, it's a constant discovery. I can really say every time, it's that we all have a different perception of what's going on in life. We all are coming from a different area, different location. We, in preparation for these videos, sometimes we talk to each other, just trying to see the direction we want to take the call and then the discussion. But the reality is that if you understand how to communicate and you can just be your true and authentic self, you can press the record button at any given time and just speak your truths and speak where you're coming from, and it's going to get perceived and understood from the people that it needs to be perceived and understood by. So I appreciate
and everybody else's opinion, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And I never, with the people that I surround myself personally, physically and digitally, I'm rarely ever concerned about what I say or do on it, because I know that we're all coming from our own directions and our own perceptions of it. And at its core, we all have our own positive values to it all. So I appreciate your time. I love it. I love what's going on. We will see you guys next week, and let's continue. Let's not be scared. And maybe Janet, send us a picture when you're outside.
Yeah.
On your food.
Okay, I will.
Send a selfie.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.